Once again, the Queen of Consorts surprises us, but not in a good way.
Made lurid and false claims about the royal family, which played on her fears and fueled paranoia.
The announcement came without warning, without fanfare, without any of the usual palace choreography that typically accompanies royal decisions. And when the words left his mouth, the entire United Kingdom stood still. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what King Charles just decided about Camilla's future and why it has left the palace in complete shock. Before we go any further, hit subscribe, because this story is only getting started. It was supposed to be a routine royal engagement. A quiet Tuesday morning at Buckingham Palace. Nothing on the schedule that would raise eyebrows or make headlines. Just another day in the life of the British monarchy. But behind closed doors, something was happening. Something that nobody saw coming. Charles had spent the night before in his private study. Alone. No aides, no advisors, just his thoughts and the weight of a decision that had been building for months. The room was silent except for the ticking of an old clock on the mantel, a clock that had belonged to his mother, a clock that had witnessed countless royal decisions over the decades. And in the silence of that room, he made a decision that would change everything. Now, before I tell you what that decision was, you need to understand the weeks leading up to it. Because this didn't happen overnight. Tensions inside the palace had been building for months. Quiet whispers, careful glances, the kind of tension that makes staff avoid eye contact in the corridors. And at the center of it all, Camila. For years, she had navigated royal life with remarkable resilience. She survived the criticism, endured the comparisons, stood beside Charles through every storm. But something had shifted. Insiders began noticing changes, small at first, a missed invitation here, a reassigned duty there, the kind of subtle adjustments that spoke louder than any public statement ever could. Charles, they said, seemed increasingly distant, not cold, just different. He had spent his entire life preparing for the crown, and now that he wore it, the weight of that responsibility was heavier than anyone had imagined. And Camila, who had once been his greatest ally, began to feel like a reminder of a past he was trying to leave behind. But here's where the story takes a turn nobody expected. The morning of the announcement, Charles made a call, not to Camila, not to William, not to any palace official. He called Princess Anne, and what he said to her would send shockwaves through the entire institution. Anne arrived at Buckingham Palace within the hour. No press, no cameras, just two siblings facing a decision that could reshape the monarchy forever. The meeting lasted 47 minutes, but those 47 minutes would change everything. Witnesses later described the atmosphere as frozen. Staff who had worked in the palace for decades said they had never seen such tension, even during the darkest days of the Diana era. When Anne left, her expression gave nothing away. She walked past the waiting aides without a word, but those who saw her said something was different. She didn't look angry, she didn't look sad. She looked relieved. Within hours, the palace had scheduled an emergency meeting. Senior officials were summoned. Legal advisors consulted. The machinery of the monarchy was in motion. But what exactly was being decided? And then it happened. The statement was released at exactly 11:00 a.m. No build-up, no warning, just a few paragraphs that would dominate headlines for weeks. His Majesty, King Charles III, has made a decision regarding the future role of Queen Camilla. The words hit like a thunderbolt. Camilla's responsibilities would be restructured, her household authority reduced, her ceremonial precedents redefined. In simple terms, she was being moved aside. But here's the part that left everyone speechless. The decision wasn't Camilla's request. It wasn't a scandal-driven resignation. It was Charles's alone. And when asked why, He gave an answer that stunned even the most seasoned palace watchers. The crown must always come first. Now, let me take you inside the room where it all happened. Because the story behind that statement is even more dramatic than the statement itself. The emergency meeting was held in the Queen's audience room, a space that had witnessed some of the most significant moments in modern royal history. It was the room where his mother had received prime ministers, where she had signed treaties, where she had made decisions that shaped the Commonwealth. And now, it was the room where Charles would reshape his own reign. Seated around the table were some of the most powerful figures in British public life. The Lord Chamberlain, the private secretary, senior legal advisors. Each of them had sworn an oath of loyalty to the crown. But on that morning, they were being asked to implement a decision that many of them had privately opposed. Because Camilla had allies in that room, people who believed she had been treated unfairly, people who had worked alongside her for years. And they were about to learn that their loyalty would be tested. Charles entered the room without ceremony. He didn't smile. He didn't greet anyone individually. He simply sat down and began to speak. His voice was calm, measured, unwavering. He explained that the decision had not been made lightly, that he had spent countless sleepless nights wrestling with it, that he loved his wife, but that love alone could not dictate the future of the monarchy. Then he delivered the words that would change everything. Effective immediately, Queen Camilla's household will be restructured. Her authority over ceremonial matters will transfer to the sovereign's office. Her public engagements will require prior approval, and her role at state functions will be reduced. The room fell silent. But here's the part that nobody expected. As Charles finished speaking, a senior advisor leaned forward and asked a question that would expose the true depth of the crisis. "Sir, does the Queen Consort know about this?" The silence that followed was deafening. Charles paused, his jaw tightened. For a brief moment, the mask of the sovereign slipped. "She will be informed," he said quietly, "after this meeting." And then, in a moment that stunned everyone present, he added something that would later be described as the most revealing statement of his reign. "I have spent my life protecting her, but now I must protect something larger." So what does this actually mean? Camilla remains married to Charles. She remains Queen Consort in title, but the power behind that title, the influence, the access, the authority has been quietly reshaped. She will no longer have final say over her own household appointments. Her public engagements will require approval from the sovereign's office. Her ceremonial role at state functions will be reduced. And perhaps most telling, Princess Anne has been given oversight of several key duties that once belonged to Camilla. The message was unmistakable. Charles was not removing his wife. He was redefining her place within the institution he had sworn to protect. But why now? Why this moment? Insiders suggest the decision had been building for years. Camilla's influence had grown steadily since becoming Queen Consort, and with that influence came friction. Friction with William, friction with Catherine, and most significantly, friction with the institutions that had kept the monarchy stable for generations. Charles, they say, finally reached a point where he had to choose. Not between love and duty, but between loyalty and legacy. He chose the crown. And that choice, whatever its justification, would leave scars that might never fully heal. Now let's talk about what happened when Camilla found out. Because that moment, perhaps more than any other, reveals the true cost of Charles's decision. Camilla was at Clarence's house when the news arrived. She had been preparing for a charity reception. Her hair was being styled. Her dress had been selected. Everything seemed normal. Then a senior aide entered the room. His face was pale. His hands were trembling. He handed her a sealed envelope. Camilla opened it slowly. She read the contents once, Then again, her expression shifted from confusion to disbelief to something that those present described as devastation. She didn't cry, she didn't scream, she simply stopped. For a full 5 minutes, she sat in complete silence. And when she finally spoke, her words cut through the room like a blade. "He didn't even tell me himself." That moment, that single sentence, exposed the depth of the wound. Because this wasn't just a decision about responsibilities. It wasn't just about restructuring a household. It was about trust. Camilla had believed that she and Charles were partners, that they had faced the world together, that their love, forged in adversity, would never be tested in this way. But Charles had made this decision alone, without her input, without her knowledge. And in doing so, he had broken something that might never be repaired. Meanwhile, at Kensington Palace, William received the news with quiet satisfaction. He had been advocating for this change for months. He had watched Camilla's influence grow. He had seen her clash with Catherine. He had observed her efforts to shape Charlotte's future. And he had decided, quietly, carefully, that boundaries needed to be drawn. But William's response wasn't triumphant. It was measured. He understood that this decision would have consequences. And he also understood that his father had made a sacrifice that might haunt him for the rest of his life. The days following the announcement were filled with tension. Palace staff walked on eggshells. Conversations stopped when anyone entered the room. The atmosphere, once carefully orchestrated, had become unpredictable. Camilla retreated to her private apartments. She canceled engagements. She refused to speak to anyone except her closest aides. Charles, meanwhile, continued with his duties. He appeared at events. He smiled for cameras. He performed the role of monarch with practiced ease. But those who knew him best said he was different, quieter, more distant. He was no longer just a king. He was a man who had chosen the crown over the woman he loved. And then 3 days later, something unexpected happened. Camilla emerged from her apartments. She was dressed in a simple navy suit. No jewels, no tiara, just a woman preparing to face the world. She had made a decision of her own. She would not resign. She would not retreat. She would not give her critics the satisfaction of seeing her broken. She would continue as queen consort, but on her own terms. The press was shocked. Palace aides were scrambling. No one had expected this. Because Camilla, who had been portrayed as defeated, was fighting back. So what happens now? Camilla will remain a visible presence, at least for now. She will continue to appear alongside Charles at state functions. She will retain her title. But her authority has been permanently altered. The household staff, once loyal to her, now report directly to the sovereign's office. Her schedule is no longer her own, and her voice, once powerful inside palace walls, has been quieted. Some call it a necessary correction. Others see it as a humiliation. But everyone agrees on one thing: this is a turning point. Now let me ask you something. Do you think Charles made the right decision, or did he go too far? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear what you think. Because this story is far from over. The monarchy has survived scandals. It has survived wars. It has survived the loss of beloved sovereigns. But now it faces something different. A king who chose the institution over the person who stood beside him. And a queen who must now navigate a role she never expected to be diminished. What happens next depends on how the family responds, on whether the wounds heal or widen, and on whether Charles's decision will strengthen the monarchy or expose cracks that can never be repaired. One thing is certain: the palace will never be the same. But here's what I haven't told you yet. The decision Charles made, the one that has left Britain in shock, is just the beginning. Because there are forces inside the palace that are already moving against him. And the next few weeks may decide not just Camilla's future, but the future of the entire monarchy. If you've made it this far, hit like, because stories like this don't stay buried for long. Subscribe so you don't miss what comes next.